Hi, everyone, and welcome to a webinar with the National Bicycle Dealers Association. We are really excited to have Bob Margevicius with us this morning. If you have any questions as they come through the webinar, please just put them in the question box. And if we don't have time for it, email us afterward. Bob is great about responding to all questions. And without further ado, thanks, Bob, for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm just going to wait and make sure everybody gets into this this meeting. I see that we're filling up rather quickly, which is great. And you know, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob Margevicius. For those of you who are specialized dealers, I'm basically employed by you. And for those who are not specialized dealers, thank specialized dealers for paying my paycheck each month. But anyway, I take care of it specialized. I work for specialized corporate. And I was clarifying this actually with Heather the other day that, you know, I do work for corporate. And so working for corporate, basically, I'm involved in everything that we do globally. And I'm not specifically involved in anything that we do locally, particularly for things that relate to the USA. And the way that the operation works is specialized, just for everyone who's there, is corporate is we're managing our global business. We sell and ship bikes into about 160 different countries around the world. And so the corporate actually manages all of that. And then from there we have, I'll just call them children. And you know, Specialized USA would be one of the siblings of our overall business. And we have many subsidiaries around the world. So Specialized USA is one of them, and they're pretty much operating independently. So, so what I'm going to take you through is we're going to talk about, and you'll see on the screen, it's called Wei Ji Ji He. And basically what that is, it's a Chinese saying that says that with every crisis, there's an opportunity. So, so I'm going to take you through that. And for those of you, I'll give you a little interesting insight about some of the things that have been going on with me. As some of you may have seen some of the presentations that were done at either the Taispo show or the Taipei show in Taiwan. I was in Taiwan I returned about 10 days ago from Taiwan. And I was in Taiwan for 75 days. And of the 75 days, 21 days I was in quarantine. And of the 21 days I was in quarantine, 14 of the days I was in government quarantine. And the government quarantine meant that I was in a 300 square foot room, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 14 days, receiving 3 meals, much like a prisoner. And then 7 days of self-quarantine in a hotel, and then I was free to actually move around the country. And the spirit and the intent of why I was there was really to try and get a handle on what was happening from the supply side, what was happening from the vendor side, how I could expedite production, what things could be done to increase capacity and get the suppliers to scale up. So it was an interesting period of time. And I went there like a good coach or quarterback with the complete expectation that with 40 years of experience in the bike business and contacts from when the industry started in Asia, that I'd be able to move the ball 50 yards and I'd be able to do some really great plays and make a lot of progress in getting production and capacity. And I have to say, after returning and just reflecting back on it, I feel like I probably gained about 10 yards. And even then, the 10 yards was really a struggle. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll try and go through them as we talk through this presentation. So anyway, I'm going to jump in from there. And if anybody has any questions about it, I'm happy to tell you about my quarantine time and what happened with my quarantine anytime. It was an interesting experience. And then from there, what happened. So let's go, Wei Ji. So what happened? What happened in the bike business? You know, for 25 years, US IBD business, we've seen some pretty mixed results. And, you know, a lot of them have been just driven by geopolitical activities, changing demographics, weather patterns, and growth spurts have been fueled by gas crises, technology, some emerging categories, and really sustainability initiatives. And so what we saw happen in 2020 was we saw a growth spurt of 32%, very unusual. But if you take a look at this, at the chart here, you'll probably notice that sales actually in 2020 did not equal what they did in previous years. We had some really good sales years in the 1990s in the IBDs. We had some good sales in the early 2000s. But we did see a sudden spurt. So what happened? So what were the factors that really influenced this change in the trajectory of the cycling sector? And I identified four things. You know, one was just changing lifestyles, and you know, so the pandemic. With the pandemic, people are spending much more time at home, and whether they're at work or leisure, and the boundaries around the world continue to shrink. So people are willing to spend more time in family recreational activities close to home. So they're investing more in themselves. And I think that that's an important change that we're going to continue to see going forward. They also discovered the joys of cycling. And, you know, a lot of that had to do with just a way of relieving themselves of stress and anxiety, and people did embrace the freedom and simplicity of cycling. So consumer spending that was originally directed on things like clothing, travel, dining out, entertainment. Well, consumers went out and they invested in products that really delivered personal enjoyment and engagement. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And, you know, thirdly, bikes are the new joyride. So today you can ride, you can be socially distanced, you know, while you're satisfying a safe way of socially engaging with like-minded people and friends. And I think a lot of consumers did realize that the cycling experience does deliver emotional and physical and intellectual and spiritual enrichment. And that, I think, is something also we're going to continue to see. And lastly, new wheels are pedaled for human power. So consumers are not just riding for sport anymore, or recreation or performance, but transportation has entered into the mix. And as the pandemic has really put a lot of pressure on public transport, so people did buy bikes, and they did buy them for transportation purposes. So what happened, and how did the channels respond? And I've got three graphs here, and I'm going to have a little matrix that's going to follow this, but the channels responded quite interestingly. And so if you take a look, the green lines on the screen represent what the inventory levels were. And if you take a look at the start of 2020, which is what these graphs show, you can see that inventory levels in the total channel represented somewhere in the area of about 8 months, 8 to 8.5 months. on hand in inventory in January. And as the impact and as the strong sales in the months of April, May, June, and July, as sales surged, the inventory levels declined at both retail and wholesale. And if you take a look at the IBD retail matrix that's on the far left, you'll see that inventory levels basically at retail were in the range somewhere of about 3 to 3.5 months on hand. And if you take a look at the matrix on the right, you can see that wholesale inventories were somewhere in the area of about 3.5 to 4 months on hand. And as the sales surge happened, and taking a look at, remember, there's only one customer, that's the one customer that's coming through the retail store. So if you take a look at April, May, June, and July, you can see that inventory levels started to decline. And so retailers were continuing to replenish inventory, and they were buying them through the wholesale channel. And I'll just take you through a quick matrix to show you a little what happened. So if you take a look, there's basically 3 little matrices here, and you can take a look and see what the change was in retail sales based on some estimates on data that's available. So you can see in the month of April, May, and June, retail sales jumped significantly. So whereas in 2019, the sales were about 224,000 bikes at retail, they went up to 370. And May from 237 to almost 470, and June from 288 to 405. So big jumps in sales. So the change from 2019 to 2020 was close to 870,000 bikes. And from the wholesale side, which is people like us at Specialized, Trek, Giant, CSG, all of us, our sales too grew. And our sales, again, went to retailers. So our sales surged from what was originally 2.1 million bikes being sold in 2019 to 2.8 million, an increase of about 716,000. And so where the gap is, that everyone talks about and everybody asks about is, okay, it really looks good. Sales were pretty good, but you can see from the last graph that's there, what were the changes and what were the receipts? How much inventory was received by the wholesalers into their inventory that refills the retail sales. And you'll see that there were, in the very beginning, in the months of March, April, and May, the wholesalers responded because everyone was really uncertain about what was going to happen in the marketplace. Our receipts declined. So there were cancellations, moving, changing. Everyone was really concerned about how the market was going to react. No one understood what the impact of COVID was going to be. All we knew was that stores and businesses and companies were closed. And fortunately, through a lot of the strong efforts of People for Bikes and other people in the industry, bicycle shops became essential business, which changed the landscape. But at any rate, what happened during that period of time is we just saw companies, many businesses and many different brands were canceling, changing, and modifying orders. So if you take a look at the wholesale receipts, we received about 300,000 bikes, and the wholesale sales increased by 716, and retail sales almost 875,000. So that'll give you a little idea about what happened and where we are today. And I want you to just take a look at the receipt numbers, and you'll see that there's a high in the receipts of around 267,000 bikes, which was in September. And if you take a look and you average them out, so average wholesale receipts are going to be somewhere between 220,000 to 250. And if you take a look at retail sales and you take a look at 2.8 million, you can see that 2.8 million, when we're receiving a maximum of say 220 to 250, those two don't match up. So we have not been able to receive and produce as many bikes as we're selling. And that's the gap that we're seeing today. So let me take you through, so what happened and what didn't happen and what things were going on. So basically brands, component suppliers, and manufacturers were not and are not prepared for this, right? So sales depleted inventory within the channel by 50% and up to 70% in some categories. And today, as I said, I just returned from Asia, so component suppliers and assemblers are struggling to deliver even a 10% increase in the demand for products. So everything being received is immediately selling through, and lead times today are extending from what was 60 days today to over 360 days. So what's the current reality? I'm sure that many of you guys saw this on Bicycle Retailer and various other places, but this is kind of the reality today. So we're looking at 300, 210, 180-day lead times on a lot of individual components that we need for bikes. And that's pales compared to what it was, which was between 60 and, in some cases, some extreme cases, 120 days. So the fact of the matter is that, lead times are really long. And that's really impacting the availability of product and availability of servicing the current market needs. So, and I wanted to bring in some important other considerations that everyone has to recognize as we look at the sales and the growth and the supply of bikes. So, e-bike and bike sales have gained 20 to 35% around the world. And I think that is so important for everybody to realize that what we're seeing, this strength and this power for bikes and e-bikes, is not necessarily narrow to the US. It's global. And the reason why that's an important piece to mention is that historically, when we've had bad weather, or we've seen gas crises, or we've seen other opportunities where there have been spurts in sales, generally they're narrow to a specific geographic location. But this opportunity and the growth in sales is worldwide. And so that's really straining the entire supply chain globally. So, and I think the second thing to just bear in mind is that bikes and e-bikes from China into the European community are subject to a 48% plus anti-dumping penalty. And that's eliminating China, which basically has unlimited scalability as a supply source. So we can't buy from China anymore for the European community. And then in conjunction with that, Section 301 tariffs, I'm sure all of you have heard about them for now almost 2.5 years. Section 301 tariffs for the US are 25% on all bikes and e-bikes from China into the United States. So that too has limited our ability to scale within China. So really it leaves Taiwan and Southeast Asia as the nucleus for both components and bike assembly and production. And another important consideration that we all have to think about is e-bike production comes at the expense of traditional pedal bike output. So for every one e-bike produced, factories can produce about 1.75 to 2 pedal bikes. So the more e-bikes that are produced, the less traditional pedal bikes we can produce. And that we're working on trying to improve the efficiency and the productivity, but today it's just a much more complex product to assemble and produce. And lastly, as a consideration, you know, product costs have increased 20+% based on raw materials, labor, components, utilities, freight, logistics, exchange rate, and lots of other things. So those all are entering into the mix, particularly as we look at how the supply chain is managed and how things are moving forward. So the question everybody says is, can we handle this growth? So, you know, as I mentioned before, over the past 10 months, inventories at both wholesale and retail channels have been drained, to 1 to 2 months supply on hand to satisfy any demand. And previously it was between 7 and 8 months if you consider merchandise that's on the water. So the available inventory today is very, very strained and limited. And, you know, as I showed in the previous graph, you know, demand continues to pace at 20 to 30% over 2019 levels, far outstripping the supply. And again, just coming back from Asia, you know, factory efficiency gains are resulting in anywhere from 10 to 15% output gains. And what I was finding at the factories is that they're working 24/7. They've added some new machinery. They're trying to efficiently produce individual products so that they can optimize the output. But there are efficiency gains of 10 to 15% in overall output. But again, when you look at demand that's pacing 20 to 30% more, and it's global, factory efficiency gains of 10 to 15% are not necessarily servicing our needs and the market needs, thus the long lead times. So what's happened? You know, current factory orders are 2 to 3 times previous years, 2 to 3 times. And there's no sign of relief, with component makers really reluctant to invest in additional capacity. So you guys may have seen this, but just a little bit of math. This is just purely IBD sales, pretty simple, similar numbers to what I had. You know, retail sales in 2019 were about 2.1 million. Beginning inventory was somewhere in the area of about 1.2 million, call it about a little more than 6 months. And we received about 1.9 million bikes. So the ending inventory was 1.16. So retail sales jumped from 2.1 million to 2.8 million, 32% gain. And the beginning inventory was 1.6 million. We received approximately 2.4, I showed that, an increase of about 22%, which left us with an inventory of about 700 and call it 800,000 bikes. So my projection, 2021, just Bob's off the cuff projection, 2.5 million bikes in 2021. We're starting with an inventory of 797,000, a change of roughly 31%. And hopefully we're going to receive about 2.5 million bikes in, hopefully. And will leave 783,000 bikes on hand. And again, you can go through all the numbers going through there, but you can see that it's going to take us quite some time to replenish the inventory, both at wholesale and retail. And I'll take you, you know, so where are things, what are things that are happening, right? So I'm on the wholesale side, and I'm out there in Asia, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. So if you take a look at this, you can see like what the estimated orders are for 2021. We're estimating and we're placing orders for like 3.1 million bikes because we all want to grow and we want to replenish the inventory that was sold through in this surge in 2020. And if you take a look at the reality is the factories can't grow at that pace. They can't grow at a 27 or 28% pace over a short period of time. So the reality is that, you know, we are going to see some increase in output, and it's going to take some time for all of the component makers to catch up. And there is going to be a mismatch. We're mismatched in what we want and what the factories can produce. And again, that was really why I was in Asia trying to get the factories and the component makers to try and scale up. So there are some things. So what can we learn, right? So, you know, the beauty of it is without inventory within the channel, this industry would have been crushed. All of you and all of us would have been crushed. So that's an important message. Also, you know, we're in an ecosystem, and the ecosystem is really dependent on the alignment and dependence on each other. And that I want to just pause on that for a minute, because as we look at individual components, the bike industry is horizontal as opposed to vertical. So we're all dependent on individual components coming from all of the makers. So if one of the makers is not scaling up, that means that the ecosystem is not capable of servicing and supplying additional needs. And I just want everybody to just think about that and just remember it, because there are going to be some other things we're going to talk about that relate to that dependency. What we also can learn is the most successful businesses are those with the largest amount of diversity, and whether it's diversity in the channels that you're selling through, or the diversity in the supply base, or the diversity in the component selection. So those are the ones that are the most successful in this particular situation. Wholesale and retail channels are necessary to serve customer needs, and we can all think that, you know, that customers are going to be going and buying things online, and we're going to see you know, manufacturer to consumer direct sales, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that it's really critical that we do have these channels, because those channels do provide a service, and they do have inventory and merchandise that's necessary to supply customer needs. E-bikes were and are important, and they do continue to drive sales. And you know, lastly, whatever demand we do not supply really is a lost sale, and we all have to look at that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little later. So, so a lot of people ask me, what's your outlook? Where do you see things going, and how do you see things the market and the inventory and the availability replenishing? So I think, and I'm just, you know, for everyone that's on the call here that's in the process of purchasing or looking at inventory and where things are going to be in the future, this might be a good snapshot for you. Things are not going to just go back to normal immediately, that's for sure. And so there are going to be levels where things are going to be easier to get, and there's going to be readily available products in different stages. So for example, kids bikes today, you're all probably noticing they're pretty easy to make. The components are pretty simple, and there's been a lot of availability over the past, I would say, 90 days or more of kids bikes. So you're going to start seeing a availability of kids bikes in the market, and they're going to be pretty readily available. I'm guessing May or June period of time. Opening price point bikes, again, where there's not a lot of concern about what the specifications are. There's going to be a lot of substitute components, a little easier to get. Those two are going to start freeing up sometime in May or June. Entry-level ATVs, June through August, you're going to start seeing things thaw out, and you're going to start seeing some availability probably in the months of September going forward. Mountain bikes, probably to the end of August, we're still going to be stretched, and taking it through November, when again it's going to be some availability and maybe open stock sometime in December. High performance bikes are going to be the last for sure, along with performance e-bikes. Just a lot of components, a lot of availability, a lot of complexity within the product. And so I'm expecting that those are going to be stretched through October, January of 22 is when we may start seeing some availability of open stock in maybe February or March. And again, e-bikes, we're struggling right now with e-bikes on batteries and a variety of other things. They too are going to be suffering for some time. We'll see opening price point, entry level e-bikes, again, free up first, and then sport bikes, and then performance bikes last. So just Bob's quick overview of where I see things. And again, I just encourage everybody to just look at their inventory, look at what the orders are, and make sure that you're alert to the fact that certain things are going to free up quicker than other things. So I'm gonna go into a couple of things that surfaced in some of the sites on why not. There's been some discussions on why not produce in the United States. What about multi-sourcing products? So I'm going to just take a few minutes and I'm going to just review these and give you some of the logic behind producing in the USA and multiple sourcing. So the first thing I want to take you through. So why don't we manufacture in the U.S.? So, you know, the first and obvious thing is the manufacturing cluster for bikes is located in Asia. And what I mean by the manufacturing cluster, like if you're in the if you're in the tech business, the tech business is centered in Silicon Valley. So that's where the manufacturing cluster is. If you're in the pharmaceutical business, the pharmaceutical business is located in either Switzerland or it's on the East Coast in New Jersey. There's plenty of medical companies on the East Coast in New Jersey. Well, the bike industry, the manufacturing clusters are located in Asia, whether it's Shimano, whether it's SRAM, whether it's now RockShox or Fox. All of the manufacturing cluster is in Asia, and that adds a lot of complexity to it. Time and product movement. The second thing is just wages. This is a really important thing, right? So these are the annual wages in Asia are a fraction of what they are in developed countries, and these are minimum wage. So you're looking at the USA, what the minimum wage is for someone who's compliant with the federal regulations of, I think, $7.25 an hour. So you're looking at $15,000 a year. Whereas in Cambodia or Vietnam, they're making about $200 to $400 a month, $200 to $400 a month. So that's a big consideration. The third thing is import tariffs. And if you take a look, you know, import tariffs on kids' bikes and other adult bikes are 11%. And if you and bundled together components, if you were to import them into the United States, bundled together, they're somewhere in the range of about 6.5%. And you can see road bikes are 5.5%. So, you know, the import tariffs are really not that, they're not that big of a barrier as far as competing domestically in the United States. And component tariffs are high. So you can see, you know, a lot of components, whether it's handlebars or whether it's wheels or whether it's disc brakes, are 10% import tariffs. So if you're going to assemble bikes in the US and you're going to be importing handlebars or disc brakes or wheels or pedals or saddles, you're going to pay a higher tariff. And again, as I said, bundled together, they equal somewhere in the area of about 6.5%. So you've got a 6.5% tariff on the individual components that you're bringing in, and then you're versus importing a complete bike at 11%, or in the case of a road bike, or let's just say a hybrid bike with 700C wheels, it's 5.5%. So it's definitely not, there's some complications with it, and it's not that cost effective. And particularly when you bundle that together with wages from Asia and the freight cost and where the manufacturing cluster is, it really is, the economics are difficult to justify. And I think the other thing, and many of you probably already know this, but you know, about 80% of the bikes imported into the United States are for the mass market. And so even though from the IBD side, we're selling a lot of bikes, call it 3 million bikes or 2.8 million bikes, but you can see 80% of the bikes imported into the United States are mass market bikes. And when you look at the sixth little matrix there, you can see that, you know, the import costs, the average import cost of some of these bikes, whether it's a juvenile bike or whether it's a mountain bike or whether it's an adult road bike, the import costs are somewhere, including the mass, you know, for $40 or $142 for a mountain bike, or, you know, in this case, $215 for a road bike. It's really difficult to try and compete with those import costs, particularly for bikes that we would be able to produce in the US. So, and for some of you, many of you know, I'm a strong advocate of Made in USA, and I've been actually part of a coalition where we're looking to try and bring production back into the United States. But, you know, at the end of the day, so what'll it take? And I want to just clarify, there are quite a few assemblers here in the United States. Many of them are doing a really great job. A lot of them are providing unique custom products, which I think is really great. And I think that right now they're able to really service the unique custom needs of people. But you know what, so, you know, how can we efficiently make bikes in the United States, and what'll that take? Well, you know, the first thing is, you know, import tariff relief. So, and that does include Section 301 tariffs. There are a lot of components that do come from China, and those components from China are subject to an additional 25% tariff. So, so eliminating tariffs on components, including Section 301 tariffs, that would be a wonderful incentive. Secondly, we really need a robust local manufacturing cluster. It's difficult to start importing from individual countries where you're dealing with consolidation, high freight costs, you're dealing with trading companies, and you're dealing with logistics costs that are quite complicated. And when you look at some of the manufacturers in Asia, just as an example, there's 2 large manufacturers in Asia where they have a component inventory turn of 5 days on hand of inventory, 5 days. And when you look at importing or producing locally here in the United States, and you're looking at whatever the transit times are, getting to the port, another 30 days of time on the water, and then receipt, and then integration into bikes. You're looking at maybe 45 days time between when products are actually shipped and where they're received. And that local manufacturing cluster is necessary in order to improve the efficiency. We need big economies of scale. We can't really look at small lots because, as I said, with logistics and other dimensions to it, it becomes expensive. And we need to have big economies of scale. And as I showed you in the previous numbers, when you look at from the IBD side, the quantities are not great, and those products, as you know, are extremely differentiated, extremely. We need some favorable trade agreements, and we need to make export attractive. So in order to build economies of scale, we need to have some free trade agreements. And just to give you an idea, many of you know that I also serve as a U.S. trade advisor. The USMCA agreement, which is the former NAFTA agreement, in order to trade free between the US and Canada and Mexico, you need 60% local content, 60% local content. So, producing here in the United States, it really sounds good if Shimano's making in the US and a variety of other people, and you can meet that 60% threshold to be able to ship into Mexico or into Canada duty-free, but that's a really tall order. That's a really tall order. So, so from my side, I am working on favorable trade agreements and favorable provisions within those trade agreements that make it attractive to produce domestically and potentially export to other countries where we can start building that economies of scale. So we do need bikes innovated for manufacturability. They're not easy to manufacture and assemble today. There's lots of nuts, bolts, there's many components internally wired, disc brakes and cables and everything. So the bikes themselves are really not very easy to manufacture and assemble. So I think that in order to produce in the United States, we need some innovations for manufacturability. We need to integrate automation to minimize labor costs. And I shared with you previously what the labor costs are. When the labor cost is close to 10 to 20 times what it is in other countries in the world, we need to identify ways so that we can minimize labor. And consumers have to be willing to pay a premium, even if it's small, for made in USA. And, I say to lots of people today, consumers look at things and they don't really look at where the country of origin, it's just made in the world today. So we really need consumers to recognize and respect that they'll pay a premium, and whatever the product is that we do produce in the United States, we produce it so that it has a quality level and a performance level that matches the premium, and that it really services that need domestically here for what it can be. And lastly, significant growth in adult bikes, particularly sold through the IBD. So currently there's about, the IBD is selling about 12% of the total bikes sold in the United States. So we need to really grow the adult bike category in order to make it efficient to produce here in the United States, and particularly because the kids' bikes are really inexpensive and they're hard to produce here in the United States at a competitive cost. So a little on the efficiency of the US, and the next thing I wanted to take you through was multi-sourcing. That subject came up in I think some of the discussions. And so the question is about, multi-sourcing. Why don't people start multi-sourcing lots of things? So the answer is it's actually there's some logic to the answers why. And it's Fortunately or unfortunately, the components with the highest barrier to entry and the most significant capital investment equipment costs are really the gating items. And it just takes years to scale up. And I know, I visited these factories, and where you see huge forging machines, you see large scale operations that are producing things like forks or cranks or derailleurs or disc brakes. I mean, these components have significant capital equipment costs, and they're the ones where there are really high barriers to entry to get in, and it takes years for them to scale up. So yeah, wonderful that we can multi-source, and the items where there are low barriers to entry, it's easy to bend handlebars. It's easy to weld up some stems. It's easy, there's plenty of tire makers out there. It's easy to take rims and make aluminum extrusion into rims, easy. But the components with the high barriers to entry and the significant capital costs are really the gating items today. And those are the ones we're struggling with, to be honest with you, whether it is the Shimano's or Tektros or Praxis or some of those other brands. They're the ones that we're really suffering with. And as I said, we're in an ecosystem. If one of them isn't available, that means we can't ship and produce bikes. So, and you know, the second thing on why we don't do a lot of multi-sourcing is, I'll just call it product integrity. You know, we list, and all of you watch really carefully what our specifications are. Consumers are checking on the website. They know what the components are. And we have to ensure that there's product integrity in what it is that we say from the specification standpoint, from the brand standpoint. And it means that we're not gonna change a specialized saddle from a high performance saddle right now into something that's less desirable for that market. We really believe in the product integrity and the specification integrity, and there are key considerations for us. And you know, fabrication processes, constructions, and finishes, and cost all vary by maker. So it's not as if you can just walk across the street and you're interested in a quart of milk and you can go from Acme to 7-Eleven and buy the same quart of milk somewhere else. There are so many different dimensions to it that it's not easily transferable. Multiple sources do dilute the value of economies of scale and minimize the production efficiency. So we want to start producing efficiently. We want to ensure that we have economies of scale. So multiple sources, it doesn't necessarily align with economies of scale and production efficiency. And you know, from an operational side, we want to ensure the quality and that it's compatible. So just sourcing from one or moving to another, it's not so easy just to ensure that that quality and it's compatible between components, particularly on the fly. There's a lot of organizational and operational inefficiencies that go with multiple sources. We have to send people to different places, and they have to be looking at, we have to design, we have to engineer, we have to ensure that the quality and the integrity of the product is right, regardless of where it is. And that adds a lot of operational and human resources, intellectual capital, intellectual property between different makers. It's just not so efficient. And you know, ensuring exact product matches between suppliers is really difficult. And lastly, you know, controlling, logging, tracking the same product from different makers. You guys know what it's like if we have a recall or we have a product problem. Once we start multiple sourcing from various different places, it's almost impossible to track where that came from, who made it. If it's a component specification coming from one to the other, it's difficult, and if not impossible to track that. And so we really want to ensure minimizing the risk and ensuring the product integrity so that the product that you guys receive is one that we're all confident in. So I just wanted to cover off on that because I think it was important just to understand about multi-sourcing. So what's happening? So I'm just going to kind of transition into kind of winding up to the end here. You know, we're in exciting states, right? So cycling trend is accelerating at a rapid pace, and you know, consumer behavior has changed. So I'm really bullish on the bike business. I'm really bullish on the bike business. And again, I'm kind of looking at it from a global standpoint. So why am I so bullish? A lot of people ask me that. I've been, you know, talking about this for quite some time. You know, there is a change in behavior, and I don't think we're going to see a snapback to pre-pandemic lifestyles. The more people work and play close to home, the more they'll seek cycling as a way to adopt to new recreational opportunities. And, you know, we are innovating, we're coming up with lots of exciting products, and we're really enhancing the experience. And I think that this is going to drive cycling engagement with the focus on fun and health and fulfillment of social fulfillment, wellness, and fitness. And I don't want anybody on this call to just forget for a minute that bicycles are essential. And don't ever forget that. You know, governments around the world declared bicycles are essential. This, in my perspective, resulted in a respect, a greater value appreciation of bicycles for personal mobilities. Consumers now realize they're investing in products that deliver utility, personal enjoyment, and engagement. And I believe they'll continue seeking those experiences that offer connection, utility, and self-development. And so we have to continue to really champion that bikes are essential. There's plenty of government incentive programs now. National, state, local governments are offering a wide range of incentives. All of you probably read that there's a People for Bikes initiative through Representative Blumenauer on a $1,500 credit for e-bike purchases. It's not only federal, but there's lots of them that are happening state and local wide. And bicycling is becoming an integral part of daily life. And it's a way to relieve traffic congestion, environmental sustainability, health promotion, and quality of life. There's a lot of environmental benefits. We have a new administration in office. I'm kind of tuned into a lot of the things that are going on with the new administration. And there's a really big renewed interest in climate control, carbon footprints, global warming. And there are plenty of places that are looking at car-free cities. The Biden administration currently is aggressively promoting all energy alternatives with net zero carbon by 2050. And bikes are one of the answers to that. It's important to know that bikes are a part of that. Infrastructure, you know, driven a lot by consumer demand, communities are investing in building infrastructure. There's aggressive action being taken. I'm living here in Santa Barbara, many of you know, where they've actually taken the main street of Santa Barbara. I don't know whether any of you know, it's called State Street, and they've put in a green lane. It's the entire street is closed to auto traffic, and it's now for foot and for bikes. So, you know, communities are ripping out street lanes and they're converting them into protected bike lanes. And safe cycling routes do inspire confidence. So we're also seeing large parking structures that are being torn down to provide multi-use commercial space with lots of secure bike storage areas. And I see that in my community here locally on a regular basis. There's lots of investments that are going on from the industry in safety. And, you know, we continue to build trust by investing in bicycle to vehicle technology, helmets, smart lighting, high visibility clothing, et cetera. There's a lot of social rewards. You know, consumers are experiencing experiences that aren't substitute for live experience. And we're going to see that. Cycling does fulfill that. And lastly, transportation. There's been rapid advancements and global acceptance of e-bikes, and it's sparked an adaptation of bikes for transportation and utility. Rideshare schemes are being embraced in many communities as a convenient last mile transport. So I'm bullish. I'm definitely bullish on the bike business. So I'm going to leave you with this, like, what are the takeaways, right? So takeaways, I talked about a lot of things. So yeah, today's market is supply driven. I'd like to tell you it's different, but it's not. And I also suggest what I talked about before is watch retail sales and specific categories very carefully to monitor the growth momentum. So watch what's happening at retail. You guys are seeing on a regular basis. So know what's happening and keep your pulse on the market. I'm going to say confidently forecast and purchase for future needs. I think I've presented enough of a framework to say that there's a big future for the bike business and there's great opportunities. So, be confident. It's you guys believe that this business is going to continue and it's going to continue to grow. And, work aggressively to retain those new pandemic customers. They're out there, they're good customers, they've got money, many of them. Just see what you can do to retain them. I love all of us to be thinking about how aggressive we can be in converting indoor riders to outdoor riders. And, I put this in, do you know that the annual subscription for indoor fitness memberships is $400 to $800 a year? $400 to $800 a year. Let's go out there and let's convert some of those indoor riders into outdoor riders. It's a good opportunity. Peloton has somewhere in the area of about 8 million subscribers. They can become outdoor riders. New cyclists are enjoying e-bikes, and they're enjoying them for, sport, recreation, performance, and transportation. I see that a lot in my community here. There are lots of children's bikes sold. I showed you the number and the quantity in the mass market. It's amazing. It's amazing. We need to capture more of that. And, the thing is, if we don't provide people a bike, there's plenty of substitutes out there. So don't think that when that guy walks out of the store and says that when you don't have a bike or you don't have a product to service them, that he's going to come back and that it's not a lost sale. But look at all the things that are out there. You've got trainers, share bikes, scooters, roller skates, electric kickboards, electric skateboards, electric unicycles, e-wheels. You guys have seen them. Hoverboards, single wheels, rideable laptops, electric roller skates. I've even seen them here in Santa Barbara. So just remember that people are out there, they want to buy a bike. And there are plenty of substitutes. So let's service what their needs are. Customers desperately need sales, service, and repairs. So don't minimize the need for that. That's a great sector, and it's going to continue to grow the more bikes that are out there in the market. I love the secondary market, particularly for e-bikes. So look and see how you can be active in the secondary market, particularly for high-valued bikes. There's a good opportunity out there when you look at secondary market opportunities. Be proactive and support local purchase incentive schemes. And I mentioned those previously, that there's lots of them out there, and just engage in them. And engage in the community to help build infrastructure. That's going to be important. So final thoughts, the coming decade is likely to usher more changes, increased usage. Cycling is socially acceptable, safe, personal, convenient, and a reliable means of personal mobility and experiential. We're all adjusting to change and adjusting to new consumer behavior patterns. So taking advantage of the coming waves of opportunity will require a lot of careful planning, dedication, the passion. You guys all have agility and responsiveness, So robust sales and profits await those who believe and act. So my parting words is, many of you have heard me say this, either make history or be history. And I think that's it for me. I want to thank everybody for listening. I know I've taken the full hour, and if there's any questions anybody has, I'm happy to field them. And I'm not sure whether we have any additional time for it, but happy to respond to any questions or comments or thoughts anybody has.
We definitely have questions that came in. I think we won't take up everybody's time past the hour, but we will send on the questions that have already been entered to Bob for answers, and we will send those answers out. Is that fair to say, Bob?
That's fine. That's fine. I can do that today.
Perfect. So we will get that done. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send them straight to Bob at his email address there, or to info@NBDA, and we will pass them on along with the other questions. So thank you everybody for being here.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, thanks. All right, bye-bye.